David Goss and Tommy Scoops on Soccer Wise. We are talking Pits in this episode. We have one of the legends, Mark, from Holding the Highline, who cover the Colorado Rapids better than anyone, on to talk with us about this whole team. Now, we are attempting something ambitious. We want to do 30 unique episodes covering all 30 teams in Major League Soccer. We're going to mix them together in the podcast. They will stand alone on the YouTube page. That does mean that we have to at some point record stuff, which means from that moment on, when things change, we can't control it. One, I blame the transfer window. Two, I blame whoever is out there in the world cursing me in every moment that they can. Three, I blame you. And four, I blame Bobby Warshaw, because you always have to get Bobby Warshaw in there at some point. We are going to talk a lot about the Colorado Rapids. I think most of what we talked about still stands. But since we recorded this show, they have purchased in a cash fair, Teddy DiPietro from DC United to bring them into this team. Tom, what do you make of the move, and how does this affect them?
I really love this addition by the Colorado Rapids. I think this is an excellent price to pay. It's like $1.125 million. I think that's fair. I think that this player has more upside than he's shown, and he fits the system really well. At the baseline, if he does not get any better than what he's shown at DC United, it's a good signing. If he improves his end product, which the Colorado Rapids are betting he will, then it's an excellent signing. So it comes down to that. He has the pressing chops. His motor is unquestioned. He's going to fit really, really well in that regard. But in DC, they also played pressing, and he fit there well. Their MO, their game model had to do with getting the ball towards Christian Benteke's forehead, as it should. He's a one-of-one player with his aero dominance. While Rafa Novahu can do some of that, Teddy DiPietro in this team will have more opportunities to combine with Georgi Mihailovic, with Rafa Novahu, with Kevin Cabral, whatever the other attackers are. So I really, really like this move. The other knock-on effect is, in reporting out this move, you're going to hear me talking in the preview that I think the team are going to go to a back three. That had been the plan, that they were going to play both a back three and a back four, but I think with this Teddy DiPietro move, I think they'll primarily be a 4-2-3-1 team so that they can get all four of Georgi Mihailovic, Ted DiPietro, Rafa Novahu, and Kevin Cabral in at the same time. And again, if it's not Kevin Cabral, it's Omir Fernandez, it's Darren Yappy, Kamani Stewart-Baines, Calvin Harris, whoever it is. I think that they're going to want to have those four attackers on the field rather than three at the back now with this new addition.
I like the move as well in the aspect of it's a known quantity at that number, and it's not a bad salary cap hit because he's a U22 initiative player. There's a lot of quality there for that, with the potential that if he does improve and get better or gains confidence knowing, parts of this are built around him, it becomes like pennies against what he's able to do and what he's worth. He also fits in the timeline with a Georgi Mihailovic, with a Rafa Navarro, with a Cole Bassett. Like, now they're kind of all in the same place in their careers, and it also continues to establish Colorado, I think, who they want to be, which is, we talked about last year, returning players from Europe who are looking to reestablish themselves, but want to be more the face of a team than just fitting in a team that has three DPs from overseas and will give them a role, but won't really be built around them. I think they've planted that flag. There's a reason Reggie Cannon then, coming back to the United States, made that move, and that's the place he chose to go. I think this now fits into another role that they've tried to put themselves in, which is like re-establishing or refurbishing homegrowns from other teams and giving them advanced roles. DiPietro doesn't fit in all of that because he's never really had that dip. Like, he's been good, but I think the idea is to give him even more of an opportunity. There's a little more worry for me about the back line now. If you talk about a pairing instead of three center backs in Maxu and Awuzium's skill sets and how it fits, but we're going to talk about that as we get into this one. So let's go to our full preview conversation with Holding the Highline. Let's continue our season previews, and let's talk about another team that's in CONCACAF Champions Cup. Yes, when you think international competition, when you think of the big time and the big boys, you think of the Pids, the Colorado Rapids. And to do so, we're going to talk with Rabbi Mark, who is a member of Holding the Highline podcast, the only soccer rabbi in North America. And we're really excited to have you on.
This is a great honor. I've always wanted to hang out with Goss and Tommy Scoops. So thanks for having me on, you guys.
And you are wearing a classic kit. So we have to start there. You are wearing a Pittsburgh Riverhounds jersey because you are based in Pittsburgh. but it has a Colorado Rapids flair to it.
That's right. It's Lalas Abubakar's kit from when he was loaned out by Columbus Crew to the Riverhounds, I think in 2017, which makes him one of two Colorado Rapids that I have interviewed who are also former Pittsburgh Riverhounds in that direction, not the other way around. And the other one, of course, is Zach Steffen, who is like the most famous Riverhounds player of all time. Like, people are just like so proud of that. But in the other direction, the Hounds have had in the last couple of years, they had Josh Gatt. I don't know if you guys remember Josh Gatt.
Obviously, yeah.
Nice.
Hell, did you see me and Goss? It's like Zach Steffen, U.S. International School. Josh Gatt? Hell yeah.
You met Josh Gatt? Yeah. let me just say, and Matt knows this when we did the pot when our podcast. Matt, Josh Gatt was not happy to be in USL. He was really like he like I think the first time I introduced myself, he just looked at me and he had this kind of overall attitude of like, I really wish I were somewhere other than Pittsburgh, other than USL, and talking to this jackass rabbi who thinks that the fact that we have a connection over the Colorado Rapids is a special bond the two of us share. We did not share a special bond. And then the other one was Mikkel Williams. And Mikkel Williams was the nicest guy in the world. One of my favorite things about Mikkel was he was a fullback who was playing for the Riverhounds as a center back. And if you asked Mikkel Williams what his best position was, he was always like, oh, I'm a natural-born striker. I should have been a striker. And it was like, except for the fact that you never score, Mikkel, that's a great, great point.
Playing center back for Bob Lilly is a really good career decision, though. It works out very well for a lot of people.
He was good. He was good here. He never had it. He had nothing but good years here.
That's such an over 30 soccer adult league player. Everybody's a center forward. Everybody. It doesn't matter. Just waiting to be unleashed.
I thought we were going to talk Robbie Mertz for a while, so I got excited, but clearly that's not going to be the conversation.
He's a class kid. He's a really good guy. And the frustrating thing about Robbie Mertz is he's like only the third best Mertz in his family because his little brother plays for University of Delaware fighting Blue Hens, and his sister was playing for Pitt and then for NWSL for a couple years. So, and by the way, Robbie, I hope you're listening to this and you can kick me in the knee next time you see me. So.
I hope he's listening
that's
to
our
it
Colorado Rapids preview. And
exactly, right there. So for anyone listening on SoccerWise right now, you can go search Holding the Highline for written content as well as the podcast, right?
Yeah, we do. I do like a Substack, and then Matt, who's the managing editor of Burgundy Wave, which is the #1 website and the oldest website covering the Colorado Rapids. He's the other half of the podcast duo. He does all the hard work. He's like the editor. I just try and keep it clean and not mess anything up, so he doesn't have too much work to do. But he does the rundowns. He's a hard worker.
So I highly recommend it. And if you're listening on Holding the Highline and you don't listen to SoccerWise, come join us. We talk about MLS live twice a week on YouTube and as a podcast. Anywhere you get your pods, we have a bunch of other shows we do. And we cover NWSL, which has just become extremely relevant to Denver thanks to one of our co-hosts, Jordan Angeli. I know you all did an episode about it already. We had Jordan on Friday to talk about the experience and what she's been through and what makes a Colorado soccer player and why they'll have a spine of U.S. gold medalists / World Cup winners day one when it all gets put together. So I cannot wait for that. And maybe we'll do another crossover episode when we get there, when the NWSL team launches. But let's dig into our MLS conversation. We are going to sort of reset the market on where we sit for transfers. We will then have our Doyleisms coming in. He is the Maimonides of Major League Soccer, the Rambam. I've called him Confucius other places, but now that I have Mark on here, nice. I can really talk about some true philosophers, and Tom can look dead in the eyes and pretend that he's paying attention. And then we're going to go through a couple of different things about the team, and we're going to finish on Andrew Wiebe's line of the year that we were going to pick for our over-under. Let's start on the transfer update, Tom. For these, I try and find the biggest story to start on. Sometimes they're in, sometimes they're out. And I think positive for the Colorado Rapids that my thought was the biggest storyline of the offseason for transfers was an incoming move.
Yeah, the double acquisition of Chidozie Awaziem and Ian Murphy from FC Cincinnati. Truth be told, this was a slow offseason, which is a good thing because the Colorado Rapids had a crazy winter last year, resetting as much as they possibly could, and it worked very well, I would say, particularly in year one under new head coach Chris Armas. So this year, it was more about continuity and trying to improve the defense. And that's what they did very early in the offseason with Chidozie Awaziem, Ian Murphy. I would say the only other the key addition is a homegrown signing, and Sam Bassett. And we all know his older brother Cole played for the Colorado Rapids. Sam was a finalist Mac Herman Trophy Award winner. He was excellent at the University of Denver. So that's a cool signing. I think he's going to play a role. And again, Mark, you're going to be better suited to tell me yes or no on kind of his minutes count this year. But moving out, again, it wasn't anything too major. It was, Lalas Abubakar, which the writing was on the wall when Murphy and Chidozie Awaziem arrived. His contract was being declined, and they were in talks, but he ends up leaving. And same thing with Jonathan Lewis. It was a bit of a bit part player last year, more rotational than key starter. So for the most part, they're bringing back their core players and just adding a couple center backs.
Mark, is this the offseason you expected?
I think it's like 2 players less than I would have expected. And I think if you ask everybody in our fan base and all the people who write to us and comment to us, they would say the same thing. A lot of people feel that this Colorado Rapids team is like a winger and maybe a second striker or a backup striker away from being a real threat in the playoffs, or like definitely, making the playoffs. But they didn't do that. And I think a lot of people were a little confused. The acquisition for a couple of years ago that everybody's been kind of like trying to figure out whether this was a dud or a good one or what was Kevin Cabral from LA Galaxy.
I refuse to take the L. I refuse to give up on this. I'm still there. I'm still being optimistic.
I mean,
I cover my eyes and can't even look at you guys while I'm saying it.
For fans who don't know, the move was an interesting one because Galaxy agreed to pay half the salary. So you get a $1.8 million player for $900,000 a year for the Rapids, which is kind of a good deal, except, if a guy's going to start in your lineup every week and he's not any good, it doesn't matter whether you're paying him $65,000 or $65 million. Like, he's just taking up a spot. And that first year he kind of did. I mean, he was kind of like, he was just wasted space. And then last year he came good and he had a whole bunch of goals and he was really talented. And honestly, the stretch when the Rapids struggled the most was in the middle to final, to the third quarter of the season when he was out, when he was injured. They didn't have another outlet there. So I think that's a big challenge. The other incoming move that I think Rapids fans have their fingers crossed about is Alex Harris, who's their first round pick. He's a Generation Adidas player. And I think the hope is that there's I was going to say, if you guys remember the Simpsons episode from many, many years ago where they referenced a buddy cop show of Gumble to Gumble, and it was Bryant Gumbel and the other Gumble, I forget. Greg Gumbel, may his memory be a blessing, right? He just passed. And that's kind of the idea here, is it's going to be Harris to Harris, that Calvin Harris and Alex Harris, no relation whatsoever, are going to set up a combo. And then on the other side, or further back in the lineup, you have Bassett to Bassett. You've got Sam Bassett and Cole Bassett. This is a psychotic fever dream. This will never happen, of course. These 4 guys are not going to get on the field at the same time. But there actually aren't that many. There's not a huge amount of options for the Rapids since they didn't bring that many players in. So the question of the wingers is who is going to play at wing? Or are they even going to play at the wing? Because Matt Doyle suggested early on in January that possibly Chris Armas was going to a 5-3-2. So, Bob's your uncle. I'm not really sure what exactly they're doing, but there are a lot of options, and the options are there because they didn't bring in all the players they probably needed.
I feel pretty strongly that's going to be the idea, is the 5 at the back, and I think that's going to help their defensive issues because, again, by bringing in the center backs that they have, but a back 3 of Awaziem, Maxu, and Reggie Cannon I think is solid. And then, again, up top, Rafael Navajo with Georgie underneath, and then Kevin Cabral kind of in that second forward, half space, whatever it is. So whoever kind of wins that spot, I think that gives them more options. And to your point, Mark, maybe that's why they didn't bring in or focus more resources on attacker, though I do still believe that they're in the market for, say, using a U22 slot on an attacker.
Let's pull Doyle in here because I think he had some comments on this.
I'll admit that I'm a fan of the Rapids' approach to roster building, right? Relying on their own academy and then going out and trying to accumulate super draft picks. We've seen that pay off for them in a very real way with Moise Bombito's performance and then the eventual sale last summer. Now, adjusting for that, compensating for that loss is what they've been trying to do ever since, because he was kind of one of one as a center back there. And they went out and they added some more uh, pieces from within the league in Chidozie Awazium and Ian Murphy, and they went out and they got more super draft picks. But the real thing, I think, is going to be a shift to the 3-4-2-1. Get another center back out there, figure out a little bit how they want to adjust their line of confrontation and where they want to take risks with the ball in central midfield. I think they kind of lost that in the middle of last year, and it made them very easy to play against for teams like the Galaxy, like LAFC, teams at or near the top of the West. So they need to tighten that up, whether it's a 3-4-2-1 or a 4-2-3-1 or whatever else is in there, whether it's guys from the Super Draft, whether it's the big name players they bought ahead of 2024. It just needs to be a little bit more structured, a little bit more sound with the ball. And this team could be looking at 50 points again. Now, if they do add or they have uncovered another goal scorer in the mix, and maybe they'll even go over 50 points, but I'm not really banking on that.
So pretty positive from Doyle, and a lot of what you guys have already said and already touched on. Mark, what do you make of that 50-point sort of line about if that's where this club could get back to? Because as you said, there was a high last year, the Leagues Cup, massive, and the way they were in the standings early, and then there was the dip towards the second half of the year.
It's interesting. I mean, I think the things about this team that say, oh, they're a contender, they're really exciting, are the fact that Rafa Navajo scored a ton of goals last year. He looked like he could do more. I believe I did a whole bunch of stuff at the end of last season on the math and the metrics. If he hit higher on his expected goals, he would have been closer to 19 instead of what I think he had, which was 15, which was one off of the Rapids all-time record of Connor Casey of 16. So that's pretty amazing. He really got service, which is a problem that Raptors strikers have never really had. Georgi Mihailovic was really, really phenomenal in stretches, and I think one of the things that happens with midfielders is you kind of see, especially historically with like Rapids attacking midfielders, it's like one game on, 2 games off. Like they're good like 10, 12 games a season, and then they're just absolutely invisible for 24. Georgie was kind of like very involved or extremely effective, like at least 50 to 65% of the time. And that was very good. That's better than, I think, I've been covering the Colorado Rapids for 11 years. I don't remember a midfielder who kind of hit that often, who was that effective. One of the things that made him so effective was Cole Bassett running around like a madman. You guys both know, I'm sure you've covered it and talked about it a million times, that Cole Bassett covers more ground than any other player in Major League Soccer. I would assume that Feyenoord, after watching him cover so much ground, looked up at the sky and went, how do we ever let this guy go? What were we thinking? Because that's where, he came from. He was loaned out to Fortuna Sittard, where they didn't use him at all. So those are the pieces that make them exciting and like above 50. And then you look at the problems with the team and you go, oh my God, are they even going to have 30 points? Which is Zach Steffen's advanced metrics in goals minus expected goals as a goaltender were awful. They were just terrible, except for his stunning play in Leagues Cup. He just looked like stuff went through his fingers, and positioning wasn't so great, and that's a big question. And then the entire backline and whether they're going to step up without a Moise Bombito speed merchant, tackler clearance machine is a great question.
The center back group is interesting, Tom, because we, on this show, from minute one, were huge Awozium fans. The moment Cincinnati got him on the field. Most of what I love is in possession with him. Mm-hmm. I think he's one of the best passing center backs in the league. I think maybe this year, as we see him for a full year, he might be the best passing center back in the league. I think he quarterbacks really well. I think he moves pieces around really well. I think he sets people up, but he doesn't dominate physically. And the things you've lost in Bombito, I don't know that he fully replaces. I don't know that Maxu can do them as well. And Reggie Cannon makes sense as a wide center back if that's where you're setting him up. He really struggled in the playoffs, like really struggled. But part of that was also a tough matchup. And I think in a way, Colorado, it felt like the win came out of the sales really quickly and kind of everyone dropped their shoulders. But I think there's a lot to love about the back line. There's also, as Mark said, a little bit to worry about.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. And again, that's why you saw the investment in that area. Like, I still think Chidozie Awaziem is really good. I understand your kind of concerns, Goss, of like, hey, what you really needed from the back line is, I guess, more aggression and more ground covering. Again, I think that he fits it. Like I'm just a believer in this player. Ian Murphy, for what he wasn't with Cincinnati, like one thing that we know he is aggressive and has an ability to cover ground. And as a back three, I think that some of the shortcomings for every player, it is much easier to paper over that or kind of be the combination above, right? Reggie Cannon isn't playing center back in a two pairing, right? I would have more questions, I think, about Maxu and Awaziem, their fit, if it was just them two. But I think with the three at the back, that this makes a lot of sense. And I just think that the upside is there, particularly with Awaziem, that lifts this group to where it wouldn't have been without Moise Bombito. And again, like, there is no like-for-like replacement for that player. Even if you just want to say him as a player, Canadian international, a really, really good player, there is no way to get that value at the number that he was at on his super draft contract and everything else. So they had to try to figure out a way to do that, and that's why I like the move to three at the back, because, again, there is no like-for-like for that player.
We mentioned Sam Bassett. You mentioned sort of pieces coming in. Doyle mentioned the academy and super draft and trying to hit on those two, and Bombito's one of those super draft picks that has hit. Is this the year for Darren Yappy? Like, is there expectations there, or am I going to ask that in 12 months again?
I'm just starting with, you said that they might need another backup forward. I don't think so, because I think it's Yappy. It's he could, between Hafanuvahu and Yappy, they can eat up the 30, 60 minutes that there are.
He'll take a step forward. I mean, he'll go from 2 goals to 5, but I think the Darren Yappy is the wave of the future is probably, I think most of us have decided that ship has sailed. I don't think there's anybody. But then again, there were people around Rapids Land who were like, ugh, Diego Rubio's trash. He's never going to come good. And then he had one really great season and everyone went, Diego Rubio is the next coming. And he was not. So.
Yeah. The stuff with Yappy, the steps you want to see him take from, his ability in possession, it doesn't feel like all of that's come. And yet, as you talked about, with the way chance creation happens for Colorado now, if he can just get his final runs right, and he can aggressively make near post runs, and he can attack center backs with his runs when the ball's coming from dangerous areas, there should be 5 to 10 goals in there for a player like that. And the other conversation,
Oh, and the staff loves his pressing. They love how aggressive he is on the front foot. And that was something that Chris Armas talked about at the beginning of last year when he started, that he really wanted a team that could press in spots well and effectively. And, he didn't really want a striker who saw his job as to kind of roam around and scoop up loose balls and bat them into the back of the net. He wanted a guy who was going to be aggressive, 90 minutes in all phases of the game, and he really liked that about Yappy, and I think that's true. Yappy had a couple of a lot of opportunities at the beginning of this season. They either turned into assists or MLS assists from back in the day when we had MLS assists, where he stole the ball in the final third and then dished it around and it turned into a threat. So that's something that they've really liked about him for the last 2 years.
A Tom Barlow built at altitude, that's just the dream situation all the way top to bottom. Tom, on the attacking piece, you mentioned U22. Is that what you think any upgrade at this point would be? I'm trying to ask you if this is a Johnny Russell club without knowing when we put this out, and if Johnny Russell has signed at that point, then I will try and edit it.
I like that shout. I do like that shout. Obviously, he doesn't fit under the U22 initiative, if my math is correct. Don't quote me on that. But so in that regard, that's the high upside, high talent, like low salary cap cost. Not acquisition cost. It could be expensive. But I think that's the biggest way that they can impact this team. And like obviously, I don't know their exact salary cap situation. I think that they're really excellent at maximizing every dollar and again spreading things out and doing what they can with super draft picks and everything that they've done. But I think that the biggest way they can impact this roster is via the U22 initiative, and I do know that they've been in the market for that's where kind of things have been looking earlier in the offseason. I don't know if things have changed. Goss, again, like I do think that if you could get Johnny Russell in this team, that would be big, but I have no idea what salary expectations or anything else. But now I can't stop thinking about that possibility.
Well, it feels like there's a clear, like, the pitch is, here's your role. We were this good without you. Like, you can help elevate us. And it's almost a Vicente Sanchez signing once again for Colorado Rapids that, they've historically tried to find a player on the back end where can you get great 30 minutes every once in a while, and that can sort of help fill in for what else you have. Let's go to Weeby's line here because I think it's relevant for the rest of this conversation, which is he asks, Rafa Navajo and Georgi Mihailovic, will they combine for over or under 33.5 goals plus assists? This is for MLS only. He put in the note that last year they did 37. Who wants to start here?
It's just a lot of math to try to do in our heads as we're figuring out what the combinations have to be. So I'll start by not answering your question so I can give Mark some time to work things out in his head. I know that Georgi Mihailovic, one of his goals is I want to set the Rapids assist record. Like, that was when he was coming in. He loves the idea of he's the guy that the team is building around. That was the Rapids pitch, of course. He wants to rewrite records books in Colorado. He was not far off. I think he gets it last year without injury. And so he's going to try to run that back. I am a little bit worried about Rafa Navajo. Like, I thought he had an excellent year. And if he scores a couple goals less, that doesn't make it a bad year. So between these two players, like 34, I mean, I think I have to go over because if the Rapids are scoring goals, these two are going to be involved in almost all of them. And the secondary assists, I think, give you a boost. So I think I'll take that if that comes down to, 16 goal contributions each? 17 each would do it. So I think that's very doable.
I mean, Tom responds with the rational, dispassionate disconnection of someone who observes all things in Major League Soccer and believes all things to be potentially reasonable and relevant.
That's my first mistake.
As a hard-bitten Colorado Rapids observer since 2013, think to myself, how is it possible for Rafa Navajo to score more goals than he did last year, since I've literally never seen any human being do that? Like, I remember when Deshaun Brown scored 10 goals.
Legend.
Deshaun scored 10 goals while taking 138 shots, which was like 35 shots more than anyone else in Major League Soccer that year, some insane number. And so he just shot and shot and shot and missed and missed and missed, and then every once in a while it went in. So, and I thought that was good. Like I thought he was having a great season. So my metric for the best possible season was last year. So anyways, this is my long-winded way of saying, like, I think Rafa's probably going to go for like 13 goals this year in the league, and then Leagues Cup and postseason, maybe he'll bag a few more. So if we're going all comps. But I think you're right about Georgie being capable of more than 10 assists, more than 12 assists, more than 15 assists, potentially. Where those other goals come from is a good question. I think the Rapids should be able to get 3 or 4 goals from their wingers in a variety of different positions. And I think Cole Bassett has more goals in him. Cole has never had a season when he connected at the rate that he should. Although he's always dangerous. So
yeah. The other piece, I think, for this team, when you ask where the goals could come from, it is a club that has always done well on set pieces. They got back to that last year. If you do start a quote unquote 3 center back setup, you have more threats on those. Reggie Cannon is an elite set piece player. Reggie Cannon also, if he's playing that right center back role, getting into the attack, I think can be really fun and a little bit dangerous. And I also think back on this number to Georgie last year. It took him 6 or 7 games, but it really took him like 2 months to feel comfortable again. And I remember talking to someone with the Rapids. They were like, a lot of these guys haven't played soccer in a while. Like, they were coming off being in Europe. They weren't getting minutes. And so it took a while for it to come together. Maybe it peaked too fast in Leagues Cup in that it was too many minutes too all of a sudden at high levels on their legs. And this year, I believe Colorado, and I have this written down, so I don't know why I wouldn't have said it. So they're in CONCACAF Champions Cup and Leagues Cup. So the challenge is there across those two competitions if they're able to get wins. But I do think it'll be more settled across the year for players like Cole Bassett and Georgie. And I'm hoping Sam Vines.
Yeah, I
want
was going to
see-
mention.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to mention Sam Vine's team in Belgium just basically sat him on the bench for a year and a half, and he didn't do a thing. I mean, he was injured for some of it, but then when he came back, he was just out of favor, and they didn't.
And they
touch
forgot
him.
to register him in the Champions
Oh,
League.
it was. I mean, we.
And the coach immediately was like, "Shit, that was my bad." How did this happen?
It was.
Take the L.
We were so sad for Sam because he was he moved his whole life over there. He moved his girlfriend over there. He was so committed to that team, and it just did not pan out the way he wanted to. Although, to be fair, I mean, he got to be on the bench in a famous moment in European soccer history when Raja Nainggolan got suspended by his manager mid-game for smoking a cigarette in the dugout. I mean, so good times. I mean,
Did he just get charged with drug smuggling or something?
not
Yeah.
be surprised.
Yeah.
No, he absolutely did. Like,
And
I
then,
was gonna say, I was
and
gonna
the headline
joke that, like,
was, the player you thought would be in trouble for this is in trouble for this.
I have yet to ask Sam Vines about what it was like to play with Raja Nainggolan, and I will be there in February. I will be there in 16 days to talk to him. So I will ask that question, even if he shoots me daggers and does not want me to.
The season kicks off early with CCC competition against LAFC. The winner of that series will play against Columbus, a Columbus team, we believe, without Cucha Hernandez as of at this moment. And listen, it's not an easy competition. It's not one the Rapids have historically had success in, but you're not going to get a more comfortable run to start it. I'm sorry, Tom. An LAFC team that flipped their entire central midfield in the last month and a half, and a Columbus team missing the best player in their club's history.
Isn't somebody playing a team called Real Hope from Haiti?
Wow.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The Rapids are
didn't we
not
talk about
Cruz
that earlier
Azul.
today?
They didn't win Liga MX to set themselves up. I'm saying from where you sit, it is a reasonable
so-
setup.
The faces that I'm making is this sucks for the Rapids. If you play another MLS team, and then if you win, you play another MLS team.
Yeah.
You don't go to the Champions League to play teams from your own.
Yeah,
Like
that I agree with.
that was the faces I was making. Like that.
No,
sucks.
and
Even
and
if
we-
you beat LAFC, it's another MLS team.
And we had a proper Champions League opportunity the last time around when we drew Comunicaciones and wound up, that team, the home game against Comunicaciones was the frozen tundra of Commerce City. It was just absolutely, it was freezing cold, and there weren't a lot of people there. And then, a week later, they were literally in like a tropical jungle environment with like monkeys swinging through the trees in Guatemala City. And it was like, this is the weirdest thing in the world. And then before that, the
Anthony
Rapids,
Hudson called it a preseason.
it was nuts. That was not fun. The other CONCACAF Champions League game in my history was the coldest game in North American soccer history. At kickoff, it was -7 against Toronto, of all teams, which is not fair that you're playing a cold weather team in the coldest game of the history. And all the beer taps in Dick's Sporting Goods Park froze because
Cancel the game.
The beer froze going from the keg through the line to the spout. Like in a space of 3 feet, it all froze. So yeah, they should have canceled it, but
Cancel
they
the
didn't.
game.
We lost. That was it.
You can't play.
So-
You can't play through those circumstances.
But
You
if
can't.
you're gonna play LAFC in weather,
Yeah.
cold weather at altitude is a pretty good opportunity. So I think with the intangibles and with how well this team kind of like came out of the gate last year, I think there's a lot of potential. There's an upset here. But you're right, Tom. This is not the matchup we really dreamed of.
No, this is not the fun part of it, but I will say this. I think the Colorado Rapids are a Goss Theorem team at this point. So many pieces came in last year. The whole roster, including Chris Armas, might be Goss Theorem, which means it wasn't bad last year. But it could. I think the West is middle heavy. I think the Rapids are part of that middle. I think that's a really good place to be right now, depending. And then you get in a situation where if the chemistry hits right, Georgie's fully healthy, if Cole Bassett's fully back in form, I think there's a lot to like about this team, which, by the way, I don't even know if I said, I'll take the over on this, saying Georgie has a better year, even if Hoffa takes a half step back and you end up at least over 33.5, which I think puts all three of us at over.
It does.
No, I don't know what Mark said.
I think I'm under. I think I'm at like 28.
Okay. Ooh, that's a big gap
Stay under.
from 37.
I thought
down
you were
to
just under on
28.
Hoffa, and I thought Georgie made up the difference.
Oh, yeah, maybe I'm like 17, so maybe I'm like 30 on them to combined.
Still
So,
an
I
under.
don't know, but I'm under. I'm still under.
We will be back to talk about all of this. Once again, if you are listening to this on Soccer Wise, you should go to the Burgundy Wave. You should go to Holding the High Line for all your Colorado Rapids coverage and just good soccer coverage in general. The other way around, if you are listening and you're a Rapids fan or a soccer fan in the Colorado area, come join us on Soccer Wise. That is what we do. We just talk about soccer all the time as much as humanly possible. MLS, NWSL national teams, and all the things in between. Mark, thank you for taking the time. Appreciate it. Toda rabah. We will do
wow.
this. We have to do this again very soon. My mom's going to be so proud.
Dropping the Ivrit. That's so great. Yeah, no, and I really appreciate being on, guys, and we look forward to getting all our listeners to listening to you guys for the rest of the year for all their other MLS needs because, we only cover 1 out of 20. Oh, no, we have 30 teams now. 1 out of 30 teams in the league. So I look forward to listening to your previews of the other 14 teams in the Western Conference at the very least.
Yeah, Tom's ears are already bleeding at this point, and we're just getting started. So we are looking forward to it as well. And thank you to all of you for listening. We'll talk to you all again very, very soon.